Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming. Welcome. As a first order of business, I'd like to acknowledge our presence on the unceded traditional lands of the Ohlone people and pay our respects to the elders, both past and present. This acknowledgement is an opportunity for us all to consider our place in history of colonization and in the undoing of its legacy. With that said, my name is Ruth Cabrera-Sus, and I'm one of the co-curators of Black Life, along with Ryan Austin Dennis, who's not here right now. Black Life is an ongoing series here at BMPFA that celebrates the vitality, spirit, and cultural production of the African diaspora. Today's wonderful program is guest curated by Tracy Brown. Tracy's a seasoned visual artist, curator, archivist, and cultural event organizer who was born in San Francisco. She received her MA in Arts Politics from the Tisch School of the Arts at New York University. When she emerged from the graduate program at NYU, she had established a reputation as a trustworthy spiritual ritual photographer. For many years, Tracy has been compelled to examine memorialization and funerary practices of the people of the West African diaspora as an excellent illustration of cultural continuity. Tracy's work has been exhibited at the California African American Museum, MOAD in San Francisco, SOMARTS in San Francisco, and the African American Arts and Cultural Complex, as well as numerous private galleries and public art venues in places like Chicago, Detroit, and Beijing. Tracy's work is held in the permanent collection of the City of Oakland and the California African American Museum. She was also a participant in the groundbreaking takeover of the new museum in New York with a collective called Black Women Artists for Black Lives Matter. Tracy also co-curated the Smoke and Mirrors exhibition, which explored the devastating effect of the war on drugs on Black and Brown people. Currently, in her independently curated show, Same Game, Different Smokers, a look at tobacco industry's effects on Black lives and Black lungs, is on view in San Francisco at the main library branch until March 19th. So do make time to go check that out. Thank you so much for guest curating this lovely program today, Tracy.
Alafia, everyone. Welcome today. Everybody's faces look so somber. I feel like I should be wearing like a black turtleneck. We're ready to do a one-woman show. Thank you so much for coming today to view this film and, more importantly, to hear from our speakers. This film is one of a series of events called the Benin to the Bay series. It was founded or created in honor of the visit of Her Majesty Queen Mother Dewoti Desir Honu Hona Duziem Gele. Right? Try writing that on a check. It was founded in honor of the visit of this great woman, spiritual leader, scholar, and it has grown into being a symbol. When we think about Benin to the Bay, we think about movement and transitions and all the stops in between. So this event in this series is meant to both explore and celebrate it's okay. Is meant to both explore and celebrate the beauty of African spirituality and spiritual practices, and also make some very bold declarative statements about its value to our people today and its possibilities, endless possibilities for healing. So without further ado, I will allow you to view the film. This is a wonderful film done by our brother Jamin Honsu, who many of you know from films like Amistad and Black Diamond. Now, I appreciated it for its production value, but I also appreciated it for its celebration of Vodun culture and Vodun as a faith. And I think it's a wonderful starting point and a conversation tool to really get us started thinking about an important faith that has been maligned very unfairly, and what we're all going to do to ensure that that does not continue. So thank you. All right. Thank you very much. Let's give another round of applause for the film. I want to start by reporting that sadly, I've already failed today. I already failed. But they say, in the immortal words of Curtis Mayfield, nothing beats a failure but a try. So what I didn't do earlier is start by giving thanks and praise to the Most High. We give thanks to the Most High, to the Necharu, to the Orishas, to the ancestors for bringing us to this moment and for giving us the opportunity to be here today. It is for them that we do this work, and with them we can do anything, and without them we cannot do anything. So we give them their proper honor and praise. I also have to ask the elders in the room if we have permission to start. You know you cannot do anything without the permission of the elders. So I would like to ask the elders, the blessed elders in the room, if we have permission to start. We give thanks. So first and foremost, I would like to introduce our panel of respected practitioners, scholar, teachers. First and foremost, on the far end, we have Yeye Louisa Tish, who is a writer.
I love you.
Yeye Tish is a writer, performer, ritualist. She's the author of several books on African and African-American spiritual culture. They include the world-famous, world-renowned Jambalaya, the Natural Woman's Book of Personal Charms and Practical Rituals, which is definitely a women's spirituality classic, Carnival of the Spirits, Seasonal Celebrations and Rites of Passage, and Jump Up, Good Times Throughout the Seasons with celebrations from around the world. Yeye Tish is an initiated elder, or Ianifa, in the Ifa Orisha tradition of the West African diaspora, and she holds a chieftaincy title, Yeye Woru, from the Fantumise compound in Ile Ife, Nigeria. She is the Olori, or the director of Ile Orumila Oshun, the House of Destiny and Love, and she is the devotee of Dambala Huedo, a Haitian rainbow serpent under the guidance of Mama Lola. In 1969, she received initiation from the Fame Temple of Amun-Ra in St. Louis, Missouri, and went on to study indigenous Native North and South American traditions in the Caribbean. We give thanks for her teaching, her online courses, and in person, providing editorial assistance and facilitating conferences and workshops in spaces worldwide. Thank you, Yeye Tish.
Ashe.
Sushil Bibbs, who is a artist in her own right. She is a filmmaker, she is a singer, she is a historian, and she is actually an ex-professor at UC Berkeley. Is that correct? Ex-lecturer at UC Berkeley. Sushil Bibbs was initiated in Haiti also under Mama Lola and emphasizes unsung ancestors in her work on stage, in writings, and in an award-winning PBS film. She's participated in Ifa since 1991 and Voodoo since 2001 and was initiated in Voodoo in 2006 in Haiti under Mama Lola. And she's best known as the author of Heritage of Power, which is an Amazon bestseller. She also talks about the sacred origins of Haitian voodoo and its impact on the lives of two great voodoo / activist priests, Marie Laveau, who is the great New Orleans voodoo queen, who Yeye Tish also has a connection to, and Mary Ellen Pleasant, the mother of civil rights in California. Thank you for being here, Sushil.
Happy to be here.
Dr. Wade Nobles, also known and belovedly as Baba Wade to so many of us. He is also known, or his name is also Ifrabemi Sangodare. Nana Kweku Beroko Bajana Obune, and he is the Professor Emeritus of American Studies and Black Psychology at San Francisco State University.
Dr. Nobles is a founding member and past president of the Association of Black Psychologists and the founding executive director of the Institute for the Advanced Study of Black Family Life and Culture, where he spent more than 40 years researching, documenting, publishing, designing, and implementing African-centered service and training programs. He's lectured all over the world and has served as a visiting professor in Salvador Bahia, Sao Paulo, and England, among other places. Currently, he serves as the chairperson for ABPSI, the Association of Black Psychologists, and the Pan-African Black Psychology Global Initiative with members in Brazil, South Africa, Nigeria, Great Britain, Jamaica, Canada, Haiti, and Ghana. Thank you for being here, Baba. And it is my great honor and pleasure to introduce the, I can't even, she is a priestess, she is a scholar, she is an artist, and she is an advocate. Her work is known and beloved all over the world, and she has paid her dues. Queen Mother, Mambo, Doctor, soon to be Doctor, now Doctor, Dewoti, Desir, Honu, Hona, Duziem, Gele. We give thanks for our Sacred Mother. And I actually want to give her the opportunity to introduce herself because I felt like the bio that I put together for her is inadequate. So I want to give the Queen Mother the opportunity to introduce herself. Yes.
Thank you for that introduction. And before I speak, I usually like to start with the words honor and respect. So when I say honor, we say respect. Honor.
Respect.
Honor.
Respect.
Honor.
Respect.
Aye, Bobo.
Aye, Bobo.
I can't tell you how humbled I am and thrilled I am to be with these illustrious activists, scholars, thinkers, shapers of the world that we're in, and this young woman who is one of my favorite troublemakers, an activist and thinker, organizer in her own right, Tracy Brown. I am Her Majesty Queen Mother Dewoti Desir Huna Huna II Glewe of Wida. I have been, I am still, have been for over 22 years a Mambo Asogwe, a high priest in Haitian Voodoo. I am a chief, a female chief in two secret societies of the Zangbeto and the Egungun in Benin. I have been the ambassador at large, or the Guattaudet de Outremer, under the late Ati National of Haiti, Max Beauvoir, and I am the current ambassador of the Grand Consul de Voodoo in Benin. I am thrilled to be here. It is one of my favorite cities. I'm delighted to have had an opportunity to watch this film because it's something I've been trying to catch for a while. And I always like looking at a fine-looking brother like Jamon. But don't tell the king I said that. And I, what do you know? I mean, I'm a scholar. I have a couple of books that are out. I've been following the footsteps of our ancestors wittingly and unwittingly, metaphysically and physically, I'd say most of my life. Only the past 10 to 15 years, I've actually made a point of physically documenting their work through my photography and trying to relay whatever stories they have to share with us at memorials, monuments, and historical sites of the Ma'afa, of the transatlantic slave trade, and now I'm moving into the trans-Saharan slave trades as well. So thank you for your attention this evening and for being here.
Wow.
Thank you for being here, Queen Mother. I want to jump right into something that may have stood out for some of you. You may have noticed that there are different spellings of the word voodoo. Can you talk a little bit about that reality? Why are there different ways of spelling voodoo? I'll ask you, Queen Mother.
Well, depending upon who your historical oppressor is, you'll have different ways of spelling it, is what it comes down to. Um, here in the United States, the four O's, Voodoo, is how it's often spelled. In French, Vodo OU, but the orthographically correct way to spell it, as we do in Haiti, because it's the College of Santa Barbara and a number of scholars and activists who worked very hard to make sure the spelling was changed and corrected so that it is Vodou, Vodou. Although in fond, you'll see Vudou. But for me, there is a difference. And not because they're my historical oppressor, the French, of the sort of foreign ways of spelling the tradition. That is the one I have the least problem with. The one I have the most problem with is the four O's, the voodoo, the stuff that conjures all of the terrible images that are conducive to Afrophobic behavior that encourages fear and disgust and disdain and psychological as well as physical violence against African descendants, because we've been made to think that voodoo is vile, it's satanic, it's wicked, it's evil, when in fact nothing could be further from the truth. Voodoo actually means to search for peace and to search fervently for peace. And thus I encourage everyone to adopt the Vodou spelling in this hemisphere. But certainly when you're in Benin, to spell it that way, or Vudou, and let the others sort of pass gently into the night.
Into the trash can of history.
That too.
So just to set the scene, I'm going to throw out a few questions. I may direct a question towards any one of you, but if you have something that you feel compelled to share about that particular question, please let me know. And then after we have our questions and our our panelists have the opportunity to discuss the the items, then we'll have a Q&A and you'll have an opportunity to ask your questions directly to the panelists. So I'd like to ask about how, I noticed that they covered it a little bit in the film, but how did Voodoo and Ifa and other indigenous traditions, how did they come to really be maligned? Can you talk about some of the things that were actually done?
Anytime a way of being is used to take the foot of the oppressor off your neck, it will be maligned. If voodoo were just entertainment on the plantation or some cute thing out of the culture, it would not have been maligned. But voodoo is an organizing tool and a power to fight oppression. And so, at any time there is a formula to oppression that has been used worldwide. Stokely Carmichael talked about the 3M company: missionaries, money, the Marines. Okay, so the first thing you do if you want to exploit any people, you go in, you destroy their culture. You demonize their deities, right? You change their economic system. You break down their family. And then you bring the Marines in and kill off everybody, okay? And in our case, because the economy of the Western world was dependent on our labor, they didn't just wipe people out, but stole our resources in terms of minerals in the earth and our labor. And anything that stands up to that, as voodoo did. I love to remind people that a bunch of so-called unorganized slaves in Haiti kicked Napoleon Bonaparte's ass. I will never let you forget that. Okay? And when you have a power like that, the one that you are standing up to must demonize you.
I'll just add a bit to say that voodoo is feared, and it's feared because of its power, and its power is with spirit, but the spirit is with the people and the vision of the people. Just imagine in Haiti that people from all different cultural groups in Africa were brought and enslaved. Many of them not, of course, speaking the same language, but all of them sharing a common and recognizing a common vision, such that they were able to put together a religion that organized the various spirit forces, that homogenized a way using Fa or whatever divination tool the priests were using to organize the fetes and the praise, and drums that still persisted. Those drums can speak. And so those things organize not only the people, but the power of the people to stand together. They even had a group for the Native Americans there, so that everybody was taken together. And when that force comes together, we have power. So understand, I mean, there's so much to understand about voodoo, but I just want to say that when one fears something, when one sees that the drums can communicate, one has to stop that in order to oppress and control those people. And that was not easy to do. And of course, Napoleon found that that was not possible to do.
Thank you. So we know that these practices were demonized, and we've heard a little bit about why. Can you talk about the vestiges of that act of demonization and how it's still showing up today? And I'm pointing that out because I'm hoping that everybody in the audience made the connection or heard what you said about the 3Ms and see those things manifesting themselves even today. Are there other ways that you see that same demonization manifesting itself today?
I think that the way the demonization is seen is the way we think. That we think in a demonic way because we think with a Western mind. And the Western narrative really does talk about savagery being normality. And the way you walk in the world is to be a savage. And we've all been educated in a Western philosophy, in a Western grand narrative, and never challenge that. So we become demonic in the way we relate to each other. We walk in the world as African beings and not African beings at the same time. And part of this problem is that the way we understand voodoo is through a Western lens. And even the wonderment of this film, as I was watching it, I was thinking, I wish I had the technology to film everybody's eyeball in this room as you watch the film. Because there is fire in our minds and our brains called synapses. And depending upon what you are frightened with, your brain fires differently. And even though we are African and we are practitioners and we try, we have been so corrupted by the savagery of westernization that we don't even recognize when we see ourselves and are afraid of ourselves. That's demonization. That we see ourselves. See, I think that Europe and Arabs before them not only took us out of Africa, it took Africa out of us. I am voodoo. I'm giving a pause here so you can hear that. I am voodoo. Voodoo is not a religion that I practice. Voodoo is the vibratory energy of my spirit. And if I understand the vibratory energy of my spirit, I walk in the world differently. But we have to rescue that. We literally have to rescue that vibratory, radiating energy so that when we see our dance, we don't see it as entertainment. When we see our voice, we don't hear it as simply the musing of some people who have rhythm. We have to recognize that when I shout, when I whisper, those are energies coming out of my spirit. And if you don't have the ear to hear it, you just think I'm rambling. So I want to try to recast our thinking in a Western term called epistemology. How you know what you know. And how you know what you know in Africa, as we evolved as beings in Africa, the one law I believe that we recognize is that reality is a vibrating, radiating, naturally God-governed universe. And I'm a leaf on that tree. And so and my leaf on that tree respects your leaf on that tree. And depending upon what I do, your leaf may fall off the tree. But when it falls, I may have a better example. The cowrie shell that I cast may go out into the universe, and how it trips and falls and rips and rolls and then lands on the ground, there's a written message there for me. If I understand the divinely governed universe that I am a part of, that's voodoo. That's Ifa. See, and we have to understand that not as a pagan religion, not as a primitive religion, but as a science of the spirit. A science of the spirit.
Queen Mother?
I wanted to say that for me, one of the important things that this film brings out, which is something I think all of us have known, at least at this table, is voodoo's relationship to nature. And so the demonization of voodoo began before it came to the Americas. It started over there. It started over there because I think Europeans were confronted with a mindset of willingness to blend in and be in harmony with nature. Nature that is something that Europe has historically undertaken to control, to cut up, to brutalize, to shape in its beautiful gardens of Versailles, for example, and other places of beauty. But we know trees don't grow in the configurations of those spaces. But when you find people who have a capacity to not only enjoy the beauty in its organic form, control it only as it needs to be in the service of the needs of the larger community. I think that is something that one has to fear. The knowledge that these trees and that these plants and these barks and these roots contain that this is medicine, that this is science that you don't know and therefore you can't control. Science that can heal. And you spoke of the leaf. The leaf, we say in voodoo, has the capacity to heal. The same leaf has the capacity to heal you or to kill you. Right. It all depends upon what you do with it. But it is a profound understanding of the neutrality, the ultimate neutrality of power, and our abilities or inability as human beings to use it to throw things off balance, off kilter, inside out, upside down, or to use it in a manner that is just and is used in a way that benefits all members of the community. And so voodoo as an eco-theological tradition, that is also liberation-based in its theology, is something that in the confrontation and the racialization of the slave trade that Europeans came to fear from Africans and became further, become even more phobic against it in the Americas. Because they went and took things to an extreme in the Americas. And what did we do? When you snap a rubber band, the further you pull it apart, the further way it's going to snap back. Everything in the universe has its equal and opposite reaction. So it was a matter of time that before the Haitian Revolution, for instance, would take place. But we are in another place, talking about eco-theology, savagery, and the contemporary impact of the schism, where we are destroying this planet that we are on. Ultimately, we're going to destroy ourselves. The planet will continue to do what it's doing with or without us. It will generate with or without us. Reform, rebuild, recycle itself. We just won't be the beneficiaries of that. So this lack of understanding of our relationship, our responsibility to this earth, that there is an ati. The ati is the form word for the tree, the grand tree, but that tree is also like that huge tree that we saw, that baobab, hundreds of years old, a container and source of wisdom that protects everything that is around it, that provides fruit, that underneath the ground attaches other communities of living beings. We're destroying that, and we are a part of that bigger cycle, that bigger world. So that eco-theological piece and the barbarism that we execute against, that is a part of that. There are other things that continue to resonate, and I'm sure we will all talk about this, as far as relationship between voodoo, enslavement, and mass incarceration, particularly in the Americas, and the marginalization of people and poverty. Those are things that we need to speak to as well.
Absolutely. And I think that if you'd like to speak to that now, that would be great. I have another sort of connector question. One of the most hated narratives that I hear across the board is that Black people or Africans in the diaspora have no connection to Africa. That when the slave trade happened, when slavery happened, we lost everything and everything was gone and everything was taken from us and we don't have anything. And that's ridiculous and it's a lie. And so I want to ask you to speak to the continued presence of Africanity in spirituality. Now I see Teach wants to say something, so you go ahead and say whatever you want.
The statement is bullshit.
Absolutely.
Let's just be real about that.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? One of the things that we have to take a look at is there is what the popular culture tells us, and then right here at UC Berkeley, if you are allowed to go into the stacks of UC Berkeley, there are tomes and tomes and tomes of writings by anthropologists who ventured into Africa, went exploring, and recorded great wealth, great wisdom, all of that. I think of Conversations with Ogato Mele by Mopar, right? This man wandered into a village wanting to explore and find out about the people, and the chief told him, go talk to that old blind man in the hut over there. Took him 15 years to come out while the cosmology was explained to him. Okay, and the lie that was perpetrated on us here was that we were totally cut off. Item number one, we can't be cut off because the energy is in our cells. That's the first thing. It will never go away. It may have been pressed down, but it is always in the epigenetic cells of our bodies and in the energetic cells of our culture. Okay. And certain external instruments were taken from us, for example, the drum. But we made drums out of cheese boxes and played it with the jawbone of an ass. Okay. The dance, the food, the sports, the colors, the taste, everything. There has been a conspiracy, a cultural conspiracy on every level to act as if whatever Black people have, especially in this country, that it was some trickle-down bullshit from Europe. The direct opposite is true. American culture is a parasite sucking on the neck of people of color. Our children start something in the street. It becomes the culture when somebody can figure out how to monopolize it and monetize it. Everything. We have many, many cultural retentions that have been transformed by the environment, our historical experience, and the movement of time. It has never been lost, and it can never be taken away.
Ashe.
If I may, I'm sorry. Just to briefly, it isn't just a question of time. It is a matter of space. It is the primacy of space in African thought that is vital to our understanding of our epistemes, of our ontological relationship with God. It is about space. because you saw very well. Yeah, just talked about our kids on the street in the Americas, the reference being to hip hop culture. What did you see? What did you see with the Zambuto throwing his cape in the air? Did that not evoke James Brown? Um, what did you see when he got up from the ground? Did that not evoke anything that you did see on the streets? Now, how is it that these young children in the Americas here who have never been to Benin, who probably never saw anything to do with the Zangbeto or the Egungun rather, how did that happen? There is it is space. It isn't just time. It is space that has kept us bound together. In the understanding that again these vibrations are permeating, they're resonating, they're floating throughout the same there's a specific a trope of a specific arena that we all share, and we're breathing the same air that way. We're taking in the same thing, and so the process of exchange continues across space. Time stops, but space is endless.
You see, I think that, well, let me say quickly. I used to tell my students that this lie about we lost our culture, well, our culture was destroyed, if they think about the story of us being on slave ships and coming across that long journey across the Atlantic, and the marketeers knew they had to keep their product well in order to sell it on the other side. And so every now and then they would take us up on deck to air us out and to give us a little exercise. And if you can envision that with your television minds, here's some brothers on the slip, and they're walking, getting air out, and say, "Oh shit, I dropped my culture. I dropped, I lost my culture." Is that sort of stupidity that they've got us to believe because we are thinking with a European mind. We're not thinking with Africa. See, Africa says, I have a knowing and knowable spirit. And so my knowing and knowable spirit knows who I am when I was in Benin, and it knows who I am when I'm in Alabama. Mm-hmm. But I don't know my spirit. And so because I don't know my knowing and knowable spirit, I go to their encyclopedia and they read about what it is to be human. And what it is to be human is to be French. Mm-hmm. What is to be human is to be Portuguese. What is to be human is to be English, to be German, to be Austrian. Mm-hmm. But never do they say anything about being human as African. So then as an African, I want to be human. So I have to crawl up and peek through the Venetian blinds of the big house to look at what white folks do and say, oh, that's what it means to be human. And so I'm going to act like that. You see, so we have to rescue and listen to that knowing and noble spirit that is divine. I believe, and my wife said, "Baby, you shouldn't do this, baby," but I believe there are two narratives. There are two narratives in the world today. There's a narrative of savagery, and there's a narrative of sacredness. Africa has the voice of the narrative of sacredness, and we have to help Africa, meaning Africa over there on the other side of the world, but the Africa in us as well, to hear that. The narrative of savagery says, if I control the microphone and tell you a lie long enough, you will believe it. Or if I control the tweet and tweet long enough, you will believe that I am a president. Mm-hmm. You see, so we have to recognize that we have to listen to the divinity is us. Voodoo tells us who we are. Ifa tells us who we are. We just don't, we have this wax in our ears that maybe if we got the room hot enough and warm enough and enough movement would dance in the room, the wax would melt out of our ears and we would begin to hear the divinities in us. Maya Angelou, word goddess, said just before she died, if you quiet yourself, you can hear the voice of God.
That's right.
Now, she wasn't saying you hear the voice of God out there because you quiet yourself here. She is saying you is the God. If you quiet yourself, you hear yourself. That's right. The voice of God. So I think that we have a choice to make. You know, I'm stopping. Du Bois said in the 20th century that the problem of the 19th, 18th century is a problem of the color line. We have a problem with this new century, and the problem is, what choice are we going to make? Are we going to choose to hear the voice of sacredness, the narrative of sacredness, which is Africa? Even though when I say Africa, don't get romantic about it. Right. You go to Africa, you're going to see a whole bunch of stuff that just ain't right. Or is the problem of Africa is the problem of the new century that we are savages and we try to use that as being civil? We are in an environment, in a society that fosters savagery. That's why we can't solve the problems we have today. We can't solve the problems of ecology. We can't solve the problem of homelessness. We can't solve the problems of hunger, but the savage says, it is only about me. And I will take your stuff and kill you in order to eat your stuff. That's what the savage says.
Yes.
The sacredness says, you are divine. Here, take some of my biscuit. Let me share my biscuit with you. You see? So we have to recalibrate. That's what I do as a I used to be a black psychologist.
Used to be.
I used to be a black psychologist because Europe, particularly people like Freud and Jung, stole sacredness and called it the study of the spirit. And they weren't studying the spirit; they were studying savagery.
They were studying savagery.
But I realize now that when I go back deep into ancient Kemet, ancient Egypt, our ancestors said there's something called the Saku. The Saku. It is the illumination. And the illumination is what is the science of the spirit. The Saku is what makes our Baptist minister shine when he preaches. When he starts preaching, he gets all excited and he starts shining. That's the Saku. That's the illumination.
And see, Baba, you kicked out my question. It was the next question about examples of traditional practice in the black church. You know, I have very staunch Christian family members who won't even come to my house because there are altars. But there's a lot of Africanity in the black church. So I wanted to talk very briefly about the Africanity in the black church, and I want to know how long we have before the Q&A. Okay, so we'll do two more questions. So I want to get to the rest of the questions, but just two more questions, and then we're going to go on to the Q&A. So if you could talk really briefly, maybe one of you can respond about the presence of Africanity in the black church. I think one of the things that was remarkable for me is I lived in Sabalu, which was featured in the film for a couple of years. And I remember being at the Fête de Vaudoun and watching the ceremony and thinking to myself, that's Pentecostal church. You know, it was very familiar to me. So, Sushil, would you like to respond?
Yes, you know, we can think of the Proverbs, and we know that our vision and knowledge endures, right? You can think of the spiritual, and you know that when you hear the spiritual, whether, you know, there's wisdom inside of that endures, that doesn't disconnect from what we know in Africa. Suddenly a funny thought popped into my head about the hats. When I was in Nigeria and I saw the gele that were so stiff and tied, and I remembered in the black church the women and how they wear their hats. But it's not that. There's an Africanist aesthetic. That's the connectivity that reflects outside, that says that it's a memory that can't be erased, you know, and that is all through the church. Even when we have the preacher who stands and he preaches, but he starts to sing, and then he starts to storytell, and then he starts to put an before his words, you know, so that what you end up having is a parable in song. All of that can be traced back hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. So the black church permeates with Africanist aesthetic and the connectivity that is within each and every one of us.
I think the black church has a problem with admitting that it does possession.
That's what I was going to talk about.
It does possession.
Exactly.
And whereas I would go into trance and channel an ancestor and name them specifically, in the Christian church, everything is Jesus. Jesus. Yeah. Okay, that is possession. That is possession. And possession permeates our culture. I don't know how many of you remember, every time there's a new black dance form, there was one not too long ago called crimping or something.
Crumping.
Okay?
Crumping. Yeah.
Crumping, right. And I have watched young black kids crump, and after a while they going and talking in tongues.
Exactly.
There is no way to get around the synapses in the head, in the heart, in the spirit, in the ori that Baba is talking about. It just gets twisted into other acceptable things. And being from Louisiana, you know what I know? The people who are staunch Catholic or staunch Christian or staunch whatever, who would be the first one to strike a match at a witch burning, let her man don't act right, let her child get sick, let her money get messed up, or she got too many nightmares, and she will crawl on her belly through the alley to my back door to have a place to release that energy. Okay, so it's a survival mechanism. It is as if we had to, under the black codes, pretend to be Christian, and we
Yes.
forgot that it was a pretense.
Thank you, yeah.
Yes. I want to I just want to add that also something about knowledge. That knowledge is there, and it's mentioned in the film, but there's so much that has been written about voodoo. There's so much that one can grab hold of and begin to understand what the connectedness is and what voodoo is. One can't say that it's not us, it is us. It is the spirit, it is the connection, it is the vibration. But there are also ways to take that Western mind and grab hold of some of that, so that you are not in fear, and so that you understand that there's a beauty of organization, there's a beauty of understanding. Just a little proverb like, when the pot boils over, it puts out the fire. Right. You can't get rid of that. You hear that in the South, right?
Yes.
And you know that comes from Fa, where they say that, one who has a mind that is Iwapeli, that is balance, can gain the blessings of Ashe. That is the same teaching. It doesn't go away. When you realize that if you don't have a balanced mind, then you cannot get the riches of your experience. And in fact, you can trip yourself up, right? Put out the fire.
Yes.
Then you realize that that's everywhere. That's always there. And so I did make a list, because there was something about in the film about writing things down. There is a list that I made from my book on called Heritage of Power.
And we have those available for everybody for after.
Yes, the heritage is voodoo. And it is available in many, many forms, so that you can connect, grab hold with a Western mind, and then turn around and realize that spirit and that power is in you. Shows in my book. I just show how a great voodoo priestess, Marie Laveau, and her understanding of this connected with, and what that religion is, and how it guided her, and how she passed that to Mary Ellen Pleasant to help her become the mother of civil rights in California. But the core of what's there is, what is voodoo? What is it that is within us? How is it that was organized in a place where it shouldn't have been organized, right? Nobody speaking language, nobody the same language, everybody, in pain, but it couldn't leave those people. It cannot leave us.
And thank you
so
for that.
you're welcome to take one of these and begin that journey in whatever way attracts you.
Thank you, for that segue. I think did we have a comment from you, Queen Mother? Oh, okay. Okay, so I have two more questions. So if we could give really brief answers to the last two questions, so that we can get to folks' questions in the folks' questions in the audience. Can you speak a little bit about the role of traditional practice as a form of resistance and in the resistance movement? We talked a little bit about Haiti, but where else has traditional practice shown up, or what other role does it play in the resistance movement? I'm sorry, that was broad.
Yeah, Queen Mother, you want to handle that one?
I don't want to speak out of the wrong side of my mouth.
I know.
But in some ways, 'cause I'm thinking about place. Where am I? Where are we? And I'm thinking about secret societies, and I'm thinking about the Black Panthers. And to the extent that there was a community that was created, keep in mind, at the heart of all African-based religions is this idea of Ubuntu, that I am because you are. Tout monde c'est monde, that everyone is a person with history, with knowledge, and that we act in the interest and in the greater good of the community. And those are some fundamental principles that I believe informed the Black Panther Party with that movement, the Black Power movement. It is about understanding who we are and empowering ourselves, but it also had to be done in secret. It had to go underground, as so much of our cultures have had to exist and subside in this subaltern space in order for us to continue to exist. Otherwise, none of us would be here. We would have been wiped out a long time ago, and all Black and brown people know that for a fact. So for me, that element of secrecy, but acting for the greater good of a community, is something that is a continued manifestation of acts of resistance that come from these fundamental notions of liberation theology that are African based.
I want to take a minute and say this, especially for the people in the audience who are practitioners. I want to put a challenge to you to use the power that we have in our pots to get the foot of oppression off of our necks, okay? A few years ago, when there was so much police violence and our men were being murdered in the street, Babalawo back east consulted Ifa and gave us the Odu and gave us the Ebo to decrease the amount of police violence that was going on in the community. And you know that there are secret societies. We get called witches because we're doing that work. But what pissed me off is I dared to post it on Facebook and ask that people with spiritual power put energy toward getting the police's foot off of our necks. And the greatest response came from Native Americans and white pagans. I want to know why, when we have as much power as we have, that we spend that power worrying about who's fucking who and who's jealous of who, when we know that we have the power to stop this madness. I challenge everybody in here to use their spiritual power for the good of the whole.
Ashe, thank you. So my last question is, we all enjoyed the film. I'd like to go down the line in closing, and then before we open up the Q&A, and ask each of you, what might you like to have seen? Although we all enjoyed the film and we know that, and we appreciated it for various reasons, what might you like to have seen in the film that wasn't present?
I would have loved to see Jamon possessed. I would have liked to have seen how he changed, his transformation. There was a little too much distance in the structure of the film and the nature of their narrative. At some point towards the end of the film, we started talking about we, however. So how did we become we? How did you receive the colliers that you were wearing? Why were you being wrapped in white and dancing? What happened? What happened? So that we might understand, for those of us who aren't already down this path, on this road, how others might make that leap of mind.
I would not like to see, in the film, not what I would like to see. I would not like to see us give legitimacy to our stuff by saying it's like what they do.
Sure.
There's too much times we say this is what they do in the Catholic Church. They have sacrifice. In the Bible has, see, we don't need to justify and validate who we are by saying you can see it over there in Christianity.
Baba.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. But you see what I'm saying? So I think that we could take that out At some point, can we talk about who we are, and not say who we are is because we are like them, or that our goodness is because they have the same goodness, or even our badness is because they get badness. We have to stand on our own ground and speak to that. And I think that's also the question about resistance. Can we imagine being Africans without saying we have to struggle with being oppressed? Can we eliminate oppression and just be African?
Sure.
Maybe if we stop thinking about resisting oppression and think about affirming African, the oppression will go away.
Woo. Sure.
The dark knows what to do when the light comes on.
The dark knows what to do when the light comes on. That's the quote of the day. Iyasushia?
Yes, I would like to have seen more what and why. When we see things in fragments, which are beautifully done, perhaps, you don't get the connectedness of, well, why are they doing that? Voodoo is spirit. This is spirit force. That spirit force is not disconnected from us. When a priest is anointed and connected to spirit, and they're able to, and spirit it comes through that person, there is a reason for that in the community. There is what that person is designated, that spirit is designated to bring to the people in the community. That was missing in the film, so that when we saw someone in possession, we didn't know that this is someone crossing that veil, coming to a designated person, that it's all been done and divine beforehand. And then when they come, they bring message. They bring understand. They bring cooling, right? They bring all of these things to the community. It was white. It was suggested, but it needs to be clear so that one understands the. I don't want to say the religion, because I think you put that very well. We are connected with that. But if you understand that, then there won't be a statement such as it's all additive, because a priest is connected with spirit, for example. One of the things, the injunctions that he or she has is itutu, to be cool. What does that mean? Not strutting. But what it means is not only having a cool head, but it also means that you have something special in your life. Yes. And you can bring that to the voodoo. Therefore, if you are a doctor and you know medicine, and you can cure someone, you may take a piece from over here and cure that person. Or you may say, oh, uniquely, I think if I have gotten from spirit that because I am connected, that I can take this thing that has never been used before and I can heal with that. That is not changing the religion. That addition that is the uniqueness that is enjoined of a priest to bring to the religion that which is unique to you.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, and so itutu, be cool. That it comes through all of our culture, talking about what persists.
Thank you.
The idea that in jazz, that we state the head and then we must vary the next verses. That's itutu. That's being cool. That's mastery. And the priest is that who has mastery. Exactly. And so that is why we revere our leaders. That also has persisted. Why do you think Clyburn had such an effect? Well, it's because in our culture we have learned to revere those whom we have seen tested and who seem to be connected. And therefore, if they speak, we respond. So that's all there.
Yes.
It's all there.
Thank you.
Okay, that's what I'd like to have seen, the connectedness.
The connectedness, and spelled out more clearly.
Oh, yeah, definitely, because this was over there, that's over there. He comes and he does that, but why?
Right. Thank you. Yeye Tish?
Well, I think a couple of things. I think, first of all, that handsome brother used his... Yeah, honey, give me a piece of that. I think that he did a good thing in using his celebrity to tell a story, and more people will listen because of his celebrity. Those of us who are on this panel, we've been doing this work for the past 30 years. It is not news to us, okay? But more people will take another look because he said it. Now, for me, what I'm interested in is the next film, which I
Which
would
he's
like
working
to
on.
see it talk more about the role of the women.
Yes.
Yes, I would like to see a film where the things that happen in Benin are connected to the things that happen in Haiti and
Yes.
in New Orleans, and in fact, to the world. Now, I have to
Yes.
tell y'all something you may not know. Okay. Ifa and our tradition, like the brother said, God's first people were given the right information from the beginning. Okay. And the world is in peril. Like Queen Mother said, some folks are trying to destroy the earth. Okay. And as a result of this, a prediction that was made many years ago, another priest told me that by the turn of the century, 3/4 of the world would worship Ifa in one form or another. And I'm here to tell you, anybody who thinks that Ifa is some little thing happening in a village in Africa or some little thing happening in San Francisco, we have temples in 100 countries.
Yes.
We have a membership of 30 million people, and that includes
150.
India, Israel, Australia. I'm trying to tell you that without us being missionaries, going in anywhere, oppressing anybody, because the earth wants us to survive, the traditions coming out of Ifa will dominate.
Ashe. Give thanks. And so now we'll have our Q&A. If you have questions, please raise your hand and a person will come over with the microphone.
Wow. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. I have a question. Yeah. I mean, when I saw what was happening with Ifa and the words and the way the dot system where it was and the alphabet was, it reminds me of something we have in mystic Islam and Sufism called ilma rumal, which literally means knowledge of the sand. In English, it can be called geomancy, but it has a similar ritual. There's dots and lines that are connected to 16 different doors, and et cetera, and there's something really beautiful about the connection of voodoo to Islam, and that's not to say Islam influenced voodoo, but more perhaps voodoo influences Islam. And I see the connections, and forgive me if I'm overspeaking, but I've seen the connections from veves to what we call tawiz or talisma, the connections from also the connections of the veve to the loa. And
so it sounds like your question is
what is the connection?
What's
yes.
the connection?
Sorry, yes. Just in summary, do you have thoughts on the connection? Yes.
I think the connections are multiple, and yes, we're all learning from the same teacher. The teacher is this earth. Okay, it is this earth. It is this planet. So the manifestations of what we learn might differ from place to place, but the ultimate lessons will be the same. So that connectedness is in fact there. The Islam, as I understand it correctly, if Saudi or Saudi Arabia is the heart of it, what does Saudi mean? Is it not dark? Is it not black? In the sense of black-skinned, dark-skinned peoples. So if it is historically African to begin with, one shouldn't be surprised at the relationship, at the connection. Our traditions, however, are far older than Islam. Islam is one of the youngest traditions of the Abrahamic traditions. So I would think it would be you being influenced by us in that sense. But in all religions, there is this element of mysticism. I thought about the Sufis when I first saw the Egungun many years ago. And so this idea of working into oneself into a trance, entering into this mystical state, engaging the esoteric and shifting energies in different ways, or something that we find manifesting itself in the music, in dance, in elements of prayer, the algorithms of these various sort of disciplines becomes the same. I think also mathematics is a critical thing. Speaking of rhythms, mathematics. There's the sacred geometry. There's the fractal geometry that informs the drawing of Veve, as well as the beautiful artwork that we see in Islamic architecture, for instance, that informs our thinking, informs our mindset, informs how we move in the world, in our relationships to community.
Thank you. Is there another question? Looks like we have one in the. We have one in the front, and then there's
someone
and one. Okay, so we'll get the person in the back, and then you, ma'am, in the front.
And you'll be the second.
I have a question regarding just get resources. So I've been interested in the whole voodoo, just studying, not the kind of stuff we learn in the books, but really trying to understand that in Ifa. But I find it really frustrating because it seems like a lot of the information is almost like it's a secret society. So I feel like, you'll look for a Baba, you'll go places. I'm searching for the real truth, the information. And it's just a lot of commercialized information, right. Or it's right next to the Baba, they have a PayPal account. So it's one of those things that part of the reason why I came here is because I've been looking for years and years, but more interested in really understanding. And maybe it's because of, our Western way of thinking that I'm looking for a book that I can read and it just explains everything, but that's not how it works. And so you go places looking for the resource, and the resource isn't there.
I hear you, sister.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for your question. If I may, really quickly, I want to point out one of the main reasons for my organization of this week of events, was to I've always wanted to have these conversations. I'm a knowledge seeker myself, and I'm also on the journey at the very, not the total beginning of the path, but I'm at an important juncture in my journey. And I wanted to have these conversations with and hear these conversations from these sacred elders. But I also wanted to, from the sacred teachers, but I also wanted to give other people the opportunity to find out about folks from whom they could learn. So Iya Sushil was kind enough to create a list of books. That's what she was talking about earlier. And we've made copies, so there should be enough for everyone here to have after the film. Also, the Queen Mother is leading a workshop tomorrow so that she can give people a certain basic information and level of understanding about voodoo. But know that all of the people on this panel are examples of folks who are trustworthy sources of information. Wikipedia is not.
That's right.
And there are not some charlatans on the web who are like, yes, you need so much help. That will be $79.99, right?
Yeah, 7,000.
Right, exactly, $79.99, exactly, $7,999. But there are people who are trustworthy sources of information, and also Yeye Tish teaches an online course, and she does various things. So don't just take the programs and see the names of these people and be like, oh, we saw them and that was great. Remember them, Google them, sign up for their mailing list, buy their books, because we need to support the work that they're doing to get you fed.
I want to say something, sister, real seriously. There are so many, your hunger is genuine. You're really looking for your spiritual path. Two things you really need to do. Item number one, build an ancestor shrine and ask them to guide you to the people who are right for your path, okay? You got to do that. You have to do that. Item number two, once you say to the ancestors that I'm serious about walking my spiritual path, then you're going to have to give up all resistance. Because, baby, they will recruit you. And boot camp ain't no joke. Your life will change. Any foolishness that you've been entertaining you'll get knocked upside your head. Get ready to get rid of them false friends. Let go of those ideas that have been holding you back. You might end up in a different profession, a different town, laying in bed with somebody different. Be ready if you ask for it. Don't play with it, because they will answer.
Yes.
They will answer, but you need their guidance first.
Ashe.
Always.
Thank you. Yeah.
And this is the last question.
Hello, Louisa Tish. You've been in my dreams. We've known each other for so many years.
About 30, 40 years.
Yeah, so you keep coming to me in dreams, and I had a feeling you were back. So I'm glad I came to know that you are here. So
She danced, done it too. Oh, yes.
My question to the elders, in the film, they talked about Ifa, and they talked about binary character. Can you elaborate a little bit on that, one of you?
Sure. I'll be glad to take it on. Right now, because some people are fighting for their right for their own sexuality, and it's being made very popular, very superficially, without looking at what the medical profession is doing, without looking at the manipulation of people, it has been made somehow taboo to talk about a binary. We're all going to be non-binary, and that is not total reality, okay? Ifa is a binary system. The sun and the moon is a binary system. The earth and the sky is a binary system. Now, that does not mean that there's not a place for everybody in that, but you cannot live in a world where there is not a binary. And all that means is that there is up and down, left and right, black and white, whole and partial, with a whole spectrum of possibilities in between. But if you are hearing a lot of rhetoric that tells you there is something wrong with the binary, you're in another one of them damn popular internet trances that's dictating how I can trace it for you. Let's go back to the 80s. Do you remember everybody talking about dysfunctional families? We were all from dysfunctional families. And then it was changed to, we're looking for our authentic selves, ever so often to keep you off track from following your spiritual path. They throw some bullshit out there that you're supposed to go, I want to do this. No, we are not mistreating anybody. And since I have the microphone, I want to say very clearly that when we study pre-colonial African culture, I can say the biggest problem that we have is our rites of passage are out of place. When our rites of passage were in place, everybody knew what their function was within the culture, whether they were male or female, young or old, smart or learning. Okay? But the sun and the moon, Ma, Wu, and Lisa, are the binary in this film. And if you think you can live outside the binary, the people who say that are lying to themselves.
Well, on that note, we are. Thank you so much. Please, let's give a hearty round of applause to our panelists. I also want to encourage you to attend the other event that we have coming up on Sunday at Red Bay Coffee in East Oakland. It is another panel discussion titled Beyond the Narrative, Accessing Ancient Wisdom for Contemporary Healing and Empowerment. So if you would like to see the list of events and also get links to information about the panelists, please go to eventbrite.com and search Voodoo. That's VODOU. Thank you. The Benin Bronze. Yes. Thank you. Ashe. Thank you, everyone. And the panelists will be out in the breezeway. We have some products that they're selling, so please come on out and support.